Hey, Rachel, welcome to LSAT Unplugged.
Hi.
Thanks for joining me today. So you've got a new book talking about law school and beyond career success. What's your number one tip? What should law school students and future lawyers be doing to set themselves up?
Well, my number one tip is it really is all about the relationships that you have. A lot of times students find jobs not through law school posting boards or through career services, but through the people that they know, through the networks that they've built. So my number one tip is let's go ahead and even if you're pre-law, let's go ahead and start building out those networks. Let's connect with professionals and meet people and let them know who we are. So that when it's time for a job, people will know you and they'll advocate for you and they'll tell you about jobs and they'll help you prepare for interviews. And just having that kind of a network in place is what's going to ensure you get a job that you actually like, that fits you.
Gotcha. Okay, so networking, we hear a lot about that. When I think of networking, I think of going to lame events and like trying to hand out business cards, people being sleazy or maybe spamming LinkedIn. How do you recommend people go about this properly?
Right. And nobody likes that. And nobody likes traditional, these cocktail parties where you don't know anybody. It sort of inflames imposter syndrome, right? It inflames this idea of I don't fit here when you're with a bunch of professionals and you're still a law student or still a college student. And you tend to just, if you're with someone who's a friend, you don't actually go out and meet people because it's just so awkward and hard. So no one likes that. The way that you do it right is the core tenet of my book, the Law Career Playbook, and the classes that I teach is this idea of an informational interview, right? And it's this concept where you do the upfront research, you figure out what it is that you're interested in the profession on LinkedIn or using Google, just figure out just something, right? And then start to figure out who's doing that work, what attorneys are doing it, what firms are doing it, and start to meet with those attorneys. Take charge of this yourself, set these appointments. You have, especially if you're pre-law, you have the time now to do this. I know it doesn't feel like it, but you certainly have less time once you're in law school and even less time if you're already employed. So if you're at pre-law, go ahead and start making a daily practice of doing the research, finding the people, and then reaching out and meeting these people and starting to connect and talk to them, figure out what they do, figure out if it's something you could be interested in, and then, make a friend. Make a mentor and continue to follow up and continue to connect with that person. That is how, that's how suddenly you're going to these networking events now. Suddenly you know people. Suddenly you know 20 people because you've connected with them previously. They'll introduce you to 20 more and it becomes a much more comfortable experience.
Gotcha. All right. So we find 20 people. Maybe someone listening is a sophomore, junior, senior in college. Maybe they've been out of college for a few years. How do you find those 20? Are they people you just come across, or did they go to your undergrad? Do you try to find some common interest? How do you recommend going about that?
Right. And my book walks through this step by step. You start with the commonalities, absolutely, because those are the people that are most likely to get back to you, right? Because the whole idea is you're trying to make a connection. If you reach out, you want them to actually respond and meet you for coffee or meet you for lunch, right? And the people who are alumni from your college or people who have worked at a similar company that you interned at or people that know your mom, you need to go down a list and create a list of just potential commonalities. Now, sometimes you literally don't have any, right? Maybe you haven't had a job before. Or maybe you're in a town where you go to a small community college or college and none of the alumni, you want to move to another city and there's no alumni connection. Well, then you start to do interest connections, right? Because what you're doing here is you're trying to figure out specific areas that you're interested in. You got to find people who are doing that work, people who are engaged in that practice area. You can use that as a hook, right? Telling them that you're really interested in, this and that they've been doing. And could you meet for coffee to talk about that? Because you'd like to do that for your career and you want to know how they walk to that. So that's how you create that list. But it's a lot of work. My program is definitely not like a get quick scheme, right? It's a lot of upfront research, a lot of downloading, a lot of figuring this out. And then what the scariest part is for students is the actual reaching out. Right? It's one thing to sit online and go on LinkedIn for 5 hours, but it's a whole nother thing to actually meet with people and put yourself out there. But it's so worth it because then that person, if you do connect with them and they like you, they will introduce you to 5 other people and you can build it out that way.
Gotcha. That sounds like a really good program, really good strategy. And I would imagine that it does take a lot of time, but you still have to actually hit send on something in the end.
Right.
What kind of response rates do you see students typically getting with this sort of approach? I can imagine that a low quality reach out spam, like you blasted like thousands of people, will get like a 0.1% response. But if they're highly tailored, what is it, 50-50? Is it 1 in 5? What does it end up looking like?
Yeah, it can be pretty high actually. And that's why it's so important to do the upfront work, right? To really, and to hone your reach out technique. You know, I have several examples in my book of what not to do. You know, you don't want to send a novel. You don't want to send a 5-paragraph reach out email. You know, we lawyers love writing their own writing, right? But no one wants to sit, and we're busy. No one can sort of parse through that. But if you send a 3-sentence, you know, email that connects with them on 3 separate levels, they will respond, right? So it's about, you know, doing this work. You get better with every single one that you do. And so as you continue to do it and you continue to hone it, it gets faster. But I always tell my students, it's a volume game. You got to do, you know, you got to do a lot, and you got to do it consistently every day. And I know that's scary for people, like, I don't have time, but just, you know, a half an hour a day. A half an hour a day, but doing it every day will get you consistent results.
Nice. Okay, so let's block off half an hour every day.
Yeah.
We're going on LinkedIn or Facebook or somewhere random. Are you recommending folks just Google for lawyers or potential mentors in their topical areas of interest?
I think LinkedIn is the most powerful and useful tool for this. It's gotten better. It continues to get better. When I first started doing this work 4 years ago, I had all these fancy guides because it wasn't as user-friendly. But now, literally, it is a smart search. You can actually find these very specific home searches by just clicking through a couple of windows now, and you don't have to do anything fancy. It's just about the time and your passion and your interest in doing it. And also about keeping, you know, another area where students really need to be consistent is keeping the information together in one spot, right? I call it a repository document. You really should. My partner actually created a spreadsheet for my students that I actually give out to anyone who purchases the book. If they email me, I will send it to you. And it's amazing because you can keep all of these contacts, all of the information that you gleaned from the contact in this one document, and it syncs to your Google Calendar or whatever calendar you use online, and allows you to schedule out your follow-up, which is, you know, a piece of this puzzle that's so important that so many students don't do, right? They're so good at the research, so good at even the initial interview, but just completely in fear about what to do about follow-up. You know, they think, I'm just a student. I've met this person. What else do I have to say to this person, this professional, this busy partner? You know, and the idea is you got to break through that and continue to do the touch, to do the contact, to not let this relationship die on the vine.
Right. So it's not just we're setting a goal of contacting this many people or having this many meetings. It's like, I can imagine like I forget what it's called, but like these project management tools that you have to move them from stage 1 to stage 2 to stage 3, but there are many, many stages involved, and you're looking for, I would imagine, a relationship that could last for years, right? Because you want it to also be there for you when you graduate from law school. Right.
And as you continue to grow in your career, I mean, these mentors become, you know, potential clients, even if if they're practicing lawyers and they go in-house. Suddenly they're a business generator. You just never know where these relationships will lead you.
Gotcha. Of course. Now, so you said like a 3-sentence email. I'm sure you have all these scripts and walkthroughs in the book, but maybe you could lay out for us like just what one of those emails might look like, and then which parts always remain the same and which parts are customized to the recipient.
Sure. I mean, like I said, the dream reach out email is one where you have 3 touches, right? Where they are an alumni. If you're in law school, for example, it's someone who went to that school. That's the ideal, right? And I always tell my students, get that list. You know, get that list as a 1L. Get that list even before you start, right? Once you know you're into that school, get the list of alumni working in the area that you want, right? So the reach out email would say, you know, I'm currently enrolled, or I'm about to enroll in such and such school. I'm very interested in your career doing X, whatever it is. You know, I've done some work X. I'd love to meet you for coffee. Boom, done. Right? You know, it's just three things, and you give them an option. Like, I'm available next Wednesday and next Thursday at 4. Let me know if that works, or if you have some alternate time. You know, you try to really, it's the call to action, right? From classic sales thing. You try to get to pin them down to a specific time. If they're not available, at least they know you're serious. You're looking at your schedule and you're making time for them.
Right. No, you want to make it easy for them. Now, so let's say you've arranged this meeting. Maybe it's over Skype or the phone, or maybe it's live in person at their office or for coffee or something like that. How should our student prep for that meeting? Once you've
Right.
gotten it, what do you do?
Yeah. That's a great, great question. And so much, again, is about the upfront work, right? You read everything about that person, right? Not just their LinkedIn profile, not just their firm profile or whatever bio is online. You really dig deep. If they're a litigator, pull up some of the cases they've worked on. Go on Westlaw, go on Lexis, go on Google. You can find stuff on Google even. But, Law 360, whatever it is, find as much as you can on that person and read it. And then prepare questions that are not answered by that material, right? Because that's what's going to, I always tell my students, be a sponge. Walk into this thing and ask the person. They should be talking most of the time, not you. This is not a job interview, right? This is about gleaning and learning and drawing information from them. Because the idea here is you want to get them talking. You want to learn about what they do. You want to learn how to speak the lingo, how they talk about themselves, how their firm thinks of itself. You want to be drawing that into yourself so that as you continue to meet other professionals, you take on those characteristics in your own talk, right? So that suddenly it's almost like you work with this person, right? You know the backdoor lingo because you've had these conversations and you've drawn it in. But to get there, you have to ask questions that are not answered by just their basic LinkedIn profile, or else that's just a boring meeting. And then the other thing I tell students is after you have this great meeting where you've gotten really specific information from this person, you go do a brain dump. You leave the meeting, you run to the bathroom, you pull out your phone or whatever it is, and you just dump down all the specifics that you learned because you're going to mine that information to do your follow-up. That's the kind of stuff you're going to round back to when you're sending out the 2-week email reminding them about you. That's how you stay on their radar.
Oh, nice. I really like that. So you write it down while it's fresh, right after
Yes.
you leave. That way you have it later. It reminds me of advice I've heard, like to write the information on the back of the business card when you meet somebody.
Right.
Yeah, it's like the next level version of that. I like that a lot. Now, what happens if, let's say our student really wants to meet this attorney and really wants to be that person someday? Like that's their ideal. They meet them and they're like just kind of flustered and just want to get to know them, but don't really have a specific question. What are are there some typical questions, like defaults that students can fall back on, like to ask the person about themselves in some way, or how did you get where you are, but like a better version of that?
Right. And that's the kind of questions you should ask, right? Just the general, especially if it is someone who is in a position that you see yourself. I have worksheets in my book where you try to figure this out. Like, where do I really want to be in 10 years, let's say, 5 years? And if it turns out from doing that inner work, this person is that, right? Then you're going to want to ask those questions. How did you get to where you are? How did you find yourself at the current firm? I call it PLE, place of legal employment. So it can be government, firm, public interest, whatever it is, right? How did you get there, really? What did it take to get there? What were your struggles? What are you proud of? And then I think one of the fun questions that I always tell students to ask is, if I worked for you, what assignment would you have given me this morning? And let them tell you, right? And that question is actually really powerful, right? Because it's not only does it give you information about what they're actually working on of that moment, but it also allows the person that you're interviewing, this partner or this successful attorney, to think in their mind for a second that you actually work for them. Just getting that visual in their mind, not that you even want that job there necessarily, but it brings you up to their level. It gets out of that imposter thing and makes you a professional on their level as well, if only for a second. It's very powerful.
Wow, that's great. It sounds like you've really walked through in depth exactly the step-by-step of how to go about this properly.
Yes, look, I've been in the trenches now for 4 years with hundreds of students, not just my physical students here at Southwestern or Loyola or USC where I currently teach, but all over the country. I've been helping people through this. I'm really passionate about it because, coming from big law, where I worked for 10 years at Jones Day, I've just seen, not just at Jones Day, but just generally, a lot of unhappy lawyers, right? People who just sort of fell into it because they had the grades, they went to the right school, then they get the right job, but they never did this inner work to actually be happy. But then it's like the golden handcuffs. They're chained to it and they don't want to leave. And that can actually be a recipe for some misery, actually. And I'd like to avoid that for my students and for people. I think life's too short for that stuff.
Wow, that's really great. So I gather that you're going around to different law schools around the country, teaching this sort of next level networking, legal employment.
Yes, I do a lot of speaking. I just came back actually from Boston. Suffolk Law flew me out to speak to their students, right? The Friday night before spring break. And it was very well attended because this stuff, it matters, right? You don't really, even in law school, you don't necessarily learn this or even have time to learn this and take it in. But, my whole thing is like, let's get the concepts down and then work on it a little bit every day. And you'll see it's like a domino effect. You put serendipity out there and amazing things happen.
Wow, this is really important. I'm glad that a lot of law schools are receptive and innovating in this way because, of course, the landscape has changed so much in the past 10 years and even beyond that I'm sure legal employment has just gotten more and more competitive.
Right. The economy has recovered, but the numbers are not good for us lawyers. It is very competitive. Even if you go to a good school, it's especially competitive. Putting aside numbers and rankings to get that job that is a good fit for you. That's the key here, right? That's what everybody wants, really.
What about networking when you're looking to maybe become a solo practitioner? How does that change the flavor of this sort of reaching out?
I think it's the same. I think that even more so, you would want to find successful solos, like solos who are making it happen, and you will want to build a network of those people, right? You'd want to do informational interviews. I mean, they may have even less time, so you really got to be, flexible with your time to meet with them. But, I think a lot of those people, they're usually hustlers and entrepreneurs, and they will want to share and connect back with you and give a little back. That's what I found is, people who've actually gone out and done that, made that risk and succeeded. Really do want to help the next person behind them. So yeah, I mean, it's the same. It's all the same. And, it's much the same now that I'm in a position, I'm a partner in a boutique and I have to develop business. I found it's the same thing. That same hustle that got me my job at Jones Day is the hustle I use now to develop business. So
wow, that's really something. It makes a lot of sense. I'm thinking, let's say John is a personal injury attorney and Jane's a criminal defense attorney. Right. You might both get asked about recommendations for lawyers for the other person's specialty. And so if they know each other, they can pass those between each other.
Happens every day, all day long.
Wow. So we talked a lot about LinkedIn, but what about in-person networking? Is that something you see as still being relevant, and how would people know where to go? Conferences and such?
Right. Conferences, events through your law school, professional events. Even if you're still in college, there's all kinds of professional organizations that are on campus that you can join, or that you can go to one of their events where they bring in professionals. There's panels. You just got to seek these opportunities out. There's bar association events that get very specific. They can be affinity groups. They can be specific practice areas. I mean, you could sit and do this research. You could sit for a couple hours and build a list just for your local area, and then just start checking out different things. Bring a wingman, bring someone with you, but don't just, back in the day, what I would do, because I understand this, and I always tell my students, like, don't cower in the corner. If you are a shy person, I'm a shy person, so I get it. Get a job, volunteer, tell the people at the organization, look, I'm coming to this event. I'm sort of a shy person. I don't like networking. Can I take tickets at the front table? Can I help, place things on the table? Whatever. I found that if you have a job at one of these events, if you have a purpose, it's actually a lot easier to just kind of talk to people and get to know people. So that's a tip I tell my students all the time.
Well, that's great. I can imagine that working there facilitates some natural conversation. And then if you're just slightly adventurous, you can then introduce yourself and make that connection.
Yeah. You got to do what you got to do, but you got to put yourself out there. I think so often students, they are really good at the online research part, and it's just too frightening to get out there. But, look, you are going to have, and I tell my students this all the time, there are going to be awkward experiences. There's going to be rejection. There's going to be, moments where you're just wishing that you never, ever walked into that room. But then you get through it and you get stronger, and it makes you better for the next time. And you have to go through those experiences to get better. That's my experience, right? I mean, I was so good at the hustle, at generating interviews, and so bad at actually doing the interview because I was shy and I suffered from the imposter thing, and I couldn't make eye contact. And I had to learn physically in my body how to do that. And that was only by doing.
That is so true. And I'm like a shy person too, and I'm nervous to speak on camera and audio and whatnot. And it's kind of like you just have to keep doing it until it gets easier. I have a friend who does stand up, and it's the same thing. You might, everyone gets nervous going up there, and you might bomb your first couple, but then you improve with time. And so I'd imagine that maybe students could start by reaching out to some lower stakes people before going for the higher stakes ones, and then build along the way.
That's right. And I always tell, like, interview for everything, speak with everyone. be the sponge. Every interaction that you're going to have, even a bad one, is going to make you better. So you have to just trust the process.
And also, like 95% of people are nervous to do this, right? And so if you're one of the few that actually does it anyway,
right,
then you're standing out right away from the start.
Yeah. That is a top percentage person.
Yeah. So to bring it back to this idea, 30 minutes a day, I could imagine people listening right now, like they're in college, they're studying for the LSAT. And so maybe they're going to put it off till later. When is there like an ideal time that in the law school journey experience where maybe it's more worthwhile carving out the time then, but it would still be fruitful for the future?
Okay. So, listeners, start today. I always tell my students, I have a huge on my presentation that I do all over the country. Start today. If this excites you, of the idea of this, of having your own destiny in your own hands, of not delegating your job search and your job career to others, but actually taking charge of it, excites you, start today. Go on LinkedIn, start making that list. Email me. I'll help you. I help people literally every day. I have this crazy life, right? But I carve out time to help people, to at least guide them and push them. I'm more of a coach in a way, to push them to do this. Most people have it in them to do this. They just need some sign off, right? So today, you got to start today. It cannot be put off. Procrastination doesn't work with this, because then it just builds up and becomes it seems so insurmountable. And before you know it, you've graduated law school, you've taken the bar, and you're unemployed. And I know that sounds horrible, but I've taught those classes. I've taught whole classes at various law schools where the name of the class was Unemployed Graduates. And that's actually the whole reason why I started teaching, was because my own law school, Southwestern, got ranked #1 for unemployment in the nation a few years ago. And I was just not going to have that because it's a good school. We're scrappy graduates. We're good people to work. And I needed to build that bridge for these students. So I started teaching it. But that is a horrible place to be. And it's what drives me here, because, with the debt load and all the work you've put in, to then suddenly just be facing unemployment after that journey is nobody wants to be in that position. And the way you will ensure not to be in that position is to start making these small inroads now.
Wow, you just kind of scared me with this really grim picture, like a future, like flipping burgers after taking on like hundreds of thousands in debt. Wow, I could see that's a powerful motivator.
It's a tragedy. It is. I'm very serious right now. I think that it is a tragedy, and people, it is very serious and not something to be taken lightly. And, everyone talks about, I want a big law job, or I want this job, right? But this idea of, I can't even, I'm going to go work for Postmates, which was what one of them was doing when she came to take my class. I mean, that's, and it's almost like for people who don't pass the bar, for example, it's the same kind of monkey you get on your back. Suddenly, because you're just racing against time, and it's like this black hole of applications, and you don't know what to do. Nobody wants that, right? Instead, what I'm offering is you start building out this network now, right? So that you have this whole range of advocates, of people, professionals who know you, who want to help you, who do help you. And there's this whole concept, I don't know if you have heard of this, but it's the hidden job market. Have you heard about this concept?
I think I might know, but explain it to me, please.
Yeah, it's this idea, and I know of it because of the school, because I went to Southwestern, because I went to an unranked law school, right? Most of the people who got jobs from my school got it through the hidden job market. And it's jobs that aren't posted, jobs that maybe don't even exist, but jobs that they create for you or call you about because they know you on the back end, right? And it's like the perfect situation. You don't even have to interview for these jobs because they know you so well, your resume is an afterthought, right? And that's sort of the ideal here, is even if you don't need it, what a beautiful thing that you have such a voluptuous network, that you have those kinds of opportunities when you're ready for them.
Yeah, and it's not as if you're only going to have to apply for a job once in your life, right? People change firms, they change locations, and then you kind of have to start over again unless you have that network to fall back on.
That's right.
And wow, 30 minutes a day, it sounds hard when you've got everything else going on, but if you just carve that out from Facebook or Netflix, just carve it out bit by bit, make a game out of it. It sounds like you've put together all the forms where it actually becomes like a smooth process.
Well, the book makes it really easy. The book came about because my students would always tell me, Rachel, I wish you were standing on my shoulder just telling you what to do. And I'm like, well, I cannot do that. Nor can you make a hologram of me, which is what another student suggested. But I can write a book. I can write a step-by-step daily guide for you, just telling you what to do. And that's what it is. It's very simple. It's very simple, but it's very powerful, like so many simple things.
That is awesome. So the book is The Law Career Playbook. It's on Amazon and everywhere else, I'm sure.
That's right.
Rachel Gezerseh, what's the best way for folks to reach you?
You can reach me through my work, Liang Lai LLP. My email's right on there. I have people emailing me through there and I'll respond. My website is lawcareerplaybook.com, or my original blog, which is breakintobiglaw.com. You can write me through either of those places.
Nice. Very catchy titles. Great. I'll put the links in the show notes for this episode. Rachel, thanks so much for joining us today.
Thank you. It was my pleasure.